Well, the big time Preds have been making the headlines this week, but it's the baby Preds who are shining on the ice. We will take a look at some of the stars shining in development camp this week, including some familiar names from this past draft today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate you making us your first listen, and we appreciate all of you loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you, and we appreciate the support you guys give us. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime who is not on Threads yet, I am told.
Not yet. I'm a little slow on the social media uptake, but I'm going to get there today, y'all. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
Yeah, follow it. And I guess we should also mention the show does not have one yet because the show does not have an Instagram account.
Yet.
So I guess we should probably tackle both of those soon, assuming the platform doesn't crash and burn in the next 3 days or so.
Yeah, social media is not my love language. So I'm a little slower on the uptake. But y'all, we're going to get there. So find us soonish.
Find us somewhere. Or just, listen here and never worry about us the rest of the day. Whatever you want. A couple of things to get to today, and I know you have been busy covering Preds development camp, and there's a couple of players that you would like to highlight, and a couple other players we're going to be talking about later this week and into next week. But first, let us pay homage to a former Preds player, Patrick Hornqvist, announcing his retirement from the NHL yesterday. Patrick Hornqvist, one of the old school beloved Nashville Predators, still in the league.
Yeah, well, after 15 seasons, he's 36 years old, multiple concussions, so this is kind of the time to step away. But he was the last pick in the draft in 2005. Am I right? 2005. 901 regular season games, 106 playoff games. And, just sort of a Predators icon until the knife in the back, Patrick Hornqvist, who scored the game-winning Stanley Cup goal in 2017, after which he became dead to me. But
that whole series sort of ruined him.
I mean, painful, but great season. And again, a Nashville Predator guy. So quite a career. Except for that whole Stanley Cup thing. Except for that. Just had to go and be a Pittsburgh Penguin, didn't you?
You had to stick the knife in the heart a little bit. Yeah. Also, one of the very few players up until a few years ago to score 30 goals in a season. So there you go. I loved him when he was in Nashville. Of course, he had that really good official rookie season in 2010 where he had 30 goals. Was kind of a big reason why the Predators made it back to the playoffs that year. I loved him. I mean, he was just like a gritty guy with some skill.
Yeah.
Just sort of like the perfect sort of complement to some of the other players, faster, more skilled players on the team, sort of like a bigger guy that can just sort of patrol the front of the net, really pissed a lot of goalies off, which was always kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, good for him. I agree. I feel like the Stanley Cup final sort of changed the perception of him in Smashville, not just because he scored that goal, but also because he was kind of a dick the whole series. I mean, it's good to see him wrap up a long career. Wish him the best moving forward.
Yeah. Sounds too like he's not going to stray too far from hockey. He was traded to the Panthers in 2020, and Florida has mentioned in passing that they might be interested in kind of bringing him in some sort of a management role, a la, Mark Borowiecki
Yeah.
some sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what's next for Patrick Hornqvist. But anyway, happy retirement and thanks for nothing in 2017.
We'll give you a cake, a carrot cake.
Oh, with raisins.
With raisins. Yeah, the worst cake possible. Let's talk about, we go from a past Pred to now some future Preds, and development camp is in full swing. We got the futures game coming up a little bit later, but you've been there all week long. What have you seen from our young guys?
This has been a really interesting development camp. And let me preface this by saying this is my favorite hockey week of the year. I love development camp. I love seeing the new guys come in, and having covered it for several seasons in a row. It's fun to see, players like Luke Prokop and Ryan Ufko, who this is like their third and fourth development camps, coming in and kind of seeing how they've grown in their games. So I love development camp. Best hockey week of the year. Super interesting to go into development camp after this draft. The Predators had, so many picks. And I have loved watching some of these newer players come in. Now, they don't have the Milwaukee guys here. So this is just strictly new players. So development camp looks a little bit different. We don't have some of the guys that played last season in Milwaukee that are here. So it's a little bit younger, maybe, group. They're structuring it a little bit differently because the Milwaukee guys aren't there. But it has been really terrific. And it's been really nice to get a little bit longer look at some of these draft picks the Predators just made.
Yeah, we want to talk about a couple of people that have stood out so far. We have some good stuff, or I should say you have some good stuff, because you're the one actually doing the work here. From a lot of different players. Not all of them we're going to get to today. But, Ann, let's talk about with the newest of the new Preds, and those are, I can't talk today. Those are the players from this past draft. And a couple of first-round picks, Matt Wood and Tanner Molendyk, who have been shining so far. You like what you've seen from both of these guys early on.
Oh my gosh. I will say so impressed with these guys. And I know, Matthew Wood maybe was a little bit of a surprise pick. Tanner Molendyk, I think, was definitely a surprise pick. There were some other players that a lot of people had kind of higher ranking in the draft. So when the Predators made these selections, I know there were people that were like, hey, didn't you see so-and-so left? But I will say it's been really great to see, especially these two first-round picks, for a longer period of time at development camp, because we're getting a better look at what it is that the Predators saw in them that made them say, no, this is a guy. Barry Trotz talked about, I can get, a third line guy. I can get, a 15 goal scorer. Go out and find me the guy. And I think, they're young. Friends, it's early. I don't want to speak anything over them yet, but what we've seen from them just this week, it really helps me understand, okay, this is what the Nashville Predators saw from these guys that make them think, you know what, we can develop these guys into something really good for this franchise.
Yeah, and there is a lot of pressure on some of these guys to step it up. We're going to hear from Matthew Wood in just a second about how he's handled that pressure. Plus, we talked about the two first-round guys. There's another guy in this draft who's the polar opposite of those first two picks, who is also turning some heads in camp. We're going to talk about that in just 1 second. But first, I want to mention today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hockey's over, but baseball is in full swing. And that means it's time to take your first swing at betting on MLB on FanDuel. And when you do, you can get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. If you bet $20, you can land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, which means an extra $200 that you can spend on everything from money line to the over-under to who you think is going to get the first home run of each game. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, and we are talking about the Preds' first-round picks from this past year. Going on the ice for the first time for the Nashville Predators, Matthew Wood and Tanner Molendyk. You kind of mentioned something right before we had our little break there, and that is that there's some pressure on these guys. They need to elevate their game, not just because they're first-round picks, but they're first-round picks in this draft. Barry Trotz has talked about it. Like, this is his first draft. He wants guys with bigger upside as opposed to maybe a safer pick. He talked about how deep this draft is, and that's the reason why a lot of teams didn't trade, was because they knew whoever they got in the first round, they could turn into stars. That's hard on a kid that's 18 years old to know that, there's going to be a lot of people kind of banking on them almost. Like, a lot of people have the tendency to just kind of jot their name in permanent ink in the Preds lineup card 3-4 years down the road. And that can be a lot of pressure on these young guys who still need to grow their games to be able to be everyday NHL players.
Yeah, and this is what I think is so tricky when you look at how the NHL does drafting, because you're looking at, Matthew Wood, he just turned 18 this year. He was a 17-year-old freshman playing at UConn. So this is a young man, and you are trying to sort of anticipate, what is he going to look like 3 seasons from now, 4 seasons from now? Is he going to look like an NHL player? And there's a lot that can happen in that time period. So I've talked about this, there is some wizardry involved in doing this drafting of these younger players. But I think that, even just at development camp, in watching some of these guys, especially Matthew Wood, Tanner Molendyk, you can see what the Predators saw, and you can see where they think this player could be headed. And it's been really impressive. Here's the thing that I've been most impressed about with Matthew Wood. Just knocked my socks off. This is a young man, again, just turned 18 years old, just finished his freshman year in college, who shows such maturity. And we talked to Scott Nickel yesterday and kind of got his feeling on some of these players. And, he was talking about Matthew Wood, and he said, this is a kid who is confident, but he is not arrogant. And there is not an ounce of arrogance about this young man. Like, he is very just a good, just a good kid, not arrogant, but he is very confident. And he kind of needs to be, because like you said, there's pressure. There's pressure when you are this team's first pick in the draft and they are looking at a youth movement. You are under a different microscope than somebody who was drafted a couple years ago is. And so we got to talk to Matthew Wood a little bit about, like, what is this like? What are you trying to show them? Are you feeling pressure? And what are the nerves like coming into development camp? And I want you to listen to what he had to say about that situation.
No, I think it's obviously a long process, and Nashville's going to get, a lot of time to watch me play, and they're not going to base it all off the first practice, especially since I know my gear here. So I think I just kind of go out there and have fun and try and learn as much as I can. We have great, staff here helping us out, and it's a great learning experience for sure.
You're 18. Any nerves out there?
No. It's kind of, I feel like if anyone's prepared to do stuff like this, it's me, and I believe in my training and what I've done to get to this point, and I'm pretty confident out there.
You gotta love him just kind of immediately saying, no, not nervous at all. There's players that, we've talked to in past camp that's like, yeah, this is my first time kind of going out there in an NHL uniform, like for an NHL team, with players who have been in the organization a few years older than me. So, you love Matthew Wood living up to that pressure, living up to that expectation, and really just embracing the challenge. Because I think that's the biggest thing, Anne, is you heard him allude to it. Like, you're not going to be able to tell the Nashville Predators what you can do in just, a 3-day mini camp.
Right.
Like, so why not just go out there and play some hockey and have fun and get to know your teammates? And, we've talked about this a lot in sports. We talked about it with the Preds this past year. When you're having fun, when you're out there with guys that you enjoy playing with, you play better. So why not get that part, kind of out and taken care of this time? It's going to be interesting, Anne, to see Matthew Wood over the next couple of years. He's going to be a sophomore next year at UConn. Last year, if not for the whole Adam Fantilli thing, probably would have been considered one of the best freshmen in the entire NCAA. It's going to be interesting, though, because we know that UConn's not a top tier program. And, there's been players come out of there before, mainly Tage Thompson, who went out and had really good, and, a former a current Nashville Predators roster member, Joachim Kondelik, somebody who almost single-handedly took the Huskies to the NCAA tournament that year. It's going to be interesting because we see the tendency a lot for prospects to kind of be, I don't want to say like locked in, but sort of constrained by the rest of their team. So when you look at Matthew Wood, somebody drafted 15th overall, you kind of want to see him maybe carry the load a little bit for the Huskies and sort of be that guy who, maybe it's a one-player team, but that one player is good enough to kind of carry his team to, a very competitive, NCAA tournament berth.
Yeah. And with Matthew Wood, the thing that just struck me so much is that maturity of like, here is what I can do. And it is not arrogance, which is really refreshing, because I think it's very easy to toe the line of confidence and fall right over that. And I think that can come back to bite a young athlete. But this is somebody who's very confident in what he does. He's confident in his training. He really likes this UConn program and has liked what he got out of it his freshman year. They've done a great job developing him. And so this is somebody that I think the Nashville Predators looked at and said, yeah, he's a little bit young. And, he's from maybe a program, like you said, that's kind of just getting into becoming more competitive in the NCAA. But he has a high ceiling. And I think the Predators really like that from him. I think this is a guy he's a bigger guy, but he's got great puck handling skills. His shooting is fantastic. And I think his ceiling is so high, the Nashville Predators are really going to like him. So definitely keep your eye on him next season at UConn. I have been thoroughly impressed with him on and off the ice.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other first-round pick, Anne, and that's Tanner Molendyk. This was the guy that a lot of Preds fans or draft experts thought maybe a little bit of a stretch. He might be there very early in round 2 if he's really your guy. Mm-hmm. But one thing that stands out right away, Anne, is his skating. And that's something that you've noticed covering in camp this week.
Yeah, Eric Dene had talked about this with Tanner Molendyk. This kid is a skater. And I thought, okay, yeah, he's a skater. Okay, he's good at that.
Avril Lavigne loves him. He is a skater boy.
He's a skater boy, BOI, my friends. Yeah. And they've done a ton of skating drills in development camp with the skating coach there. And I will tell you, I could not watch Tanner Molendyk when he was doing these skating drills. It is absolutely mesmerizing to me how effortless his skating appears to be. Just effortless. And, I don't know how to break down skating like Eric Dene does. But when Eric Dene tells you this guy is a good skater, I'm telling you, absolutely true. Talked about, this is somebody who's going to come into this organization and compete with Spencer Stastny for one of the best skaters in the organization. And friends, Spencer Stastny is one of the best skaters in the AHL. Huge Spencer Stastny fan. And we saw that in the couple of games he played in Nashville. His skating makes his game great. Tanner Molendyk is such a diamond in the rough. And, people questioned this pick. Why this guy? When you watch him and you see how good he is at that, you think this is a swing for the fences pick, because you build up some other aspects of his game as a defenseman, and you are going to find a real gem with this kid if his development stays on track. So impressed with him, truly. And I know it sounds funny, but you can't not watch this kid skate. He's that good. It's incredible.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting too, because next year is going to be a big year for him. We mentioned maybe some of his stats weren't comparable or favorable when you compared him to maybe some other defensemen in the draft. But that's also because, remember, he was not Saskatoon's go-to blue liner either. Right. They had two guys that were older and higher up than him in the depth chart. So he was playing a lot of second line, sometimes third line minutes, or third pair minutes, I should say. And that's going to be interesting because next year, one of those two guys we mentioned are aged out. They're going to be in the pros next year. And so he's going to get a chance to really kind of be like, okay, here's what I can do. Yeah. And that's going to be interesting to see him watch because, like we said, all the tools to be a good NHL player are there. And it seems like that is why the Nashville Predators took a swing on him, was because they see the tools. It's just time to maybe see some evidence on the junior level to see that he can put them all together.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things that we got to talk to Tanner Molendyk about this week, another kid who really impressed me, young man who really impressed me off the ice is Tanner Molendyk. But we asked him, like, hey, what are you wanting to show the Nashville Predators here? And he also talked a little bit just about his experience being drafted. This is what he had to say.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet, obviously, getting to play in Nashville. I was walking around for a week with my parents, so I think kind of like the city. I was like, okay, it'd be pretty sweet to play here. And I think after I got drafted, I was fired up.
What are you trying to show the coaching staff?
I think just my speed and my edges, I think, and then just obviously getting pucks up and just show them kind of how competitive I am. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, Andy, do you think maybe the draft being in Nashville helps that a little bit, because you're already kind of sort of get that first look at the city? You're out here for a few days, you get all the the tourist traps and stuff around, you get your first walk down Broadway, and now you get drafted in the city that you're going to be playing in. Like, do you think maybe that helps a little bit, that he's like, oh, there's already some familiarity here, like I know where to go when camp starts?
Yeah. You know what? It's across the board. That is something that we've heard from almost all of these players who were drafted in this draft, is how cool it was to have been in Nashville, for the ones that were here for the draft, to be in Nashville, to be able to spend time in the city. And I think that that's really brought an energy to this development camp in a unique way this year, because these guys have been around the town. They love Nashville. Across the board, these guys are all like, this city is amazing. A lot of them have watched Nashville Predators games, so they know the vibe here in Smashville. They know what it's like at Bridgestone Arena. So I do think that that's really brought extra energy into development camp for a lot of these players. Tanner Molendyk has loved the time he's gotten to spend here in Nashville. He's kind of stayed through and done the touristy things. But he is really looking forward to showing this team what he can do. And he's not somebody that you're going to look at. He's not, an oversized defenseman and be blown away with. But I think his talent and skills are really going to impress Nashville down the road.
Speaking of not oversized, and we've talked about the first two players that the Nashville Predators drafted. Let's talk about the last guy the Nashville Predators drafted, Aiden Fink. Remember, this was the guy that the Predators traded. They traded up to get this pick just so they can give David Poile his last little goodbye, make one last pick. Barry Trotz and David Poile both said afterwards, I was like, yeah, to be honest, we don't know that much about him. We just kind of did this to make this pick. And it's funny because you and I talked to a couple of Pennsylvania people at the draft, including the some Locked On Flyers people. Yeah. That were like, look, we've seen this guy.
Oh, come on.
We've watched him play. You might have just found a sleeping giant. If he can fix one or two things, you might have a legitimate NHL prospects on your hands.
Yeah, this pick delights me to my core, y'all. Full disclosure, I'm a Pennsylvania girl. I'm a huge Penn State fan. And Aiden Fink is going to be playing at Penn State with Chase McLean. And so I'm on board. Like you had me at hello with this pick. But I love what we've seen from Aiden Fink at this draft because, some people could say, hey, aren't you so lucky and all of this, but you know what? He is here to make an NHL team. He is here to make an impression. And, the Predators had talked with him, had shown some interest in him ahead of time. I don't know that he anticipated that he was actually going to get drafted. And he talked about how he found out that he was picked by David Poile last. And I think it is a delightful story. So this is how it all went down for Aiden Fink.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually a funny story. I was just walking out of my class for Penn State, so just walking out of there, I got a call from my agent that I got drafted in Nashville Predators, and, he texted me it was David Poile's last pick as well. So, once I saw the recording that my dad sent me, I got goosebumps when I saw it, so I'm very honored to be that pick, and, it's special to me to be that pick. Yeah, I mean, I talked to the Preds a decent amount of times, but when they picked me, I was very excited. I've always watched games here. The electric culture here for the playoff games is unbelievable. So, I'm excited to be a part of this organization.
So, both on and off the ice.
Yeah, I think I'm a humble, caring off the ice person. I always care about my teammates. I always try to make them better every day on the ice. So, yeah, that's me off the ice. And on the ice, I feel like I'm a smart, skilled and hardworking forward. I'm always on the puck trying to create second chances for my teammates. I'm very smart on the ice, and I know where everyone else is on the ice.
First off, can we bring up what you mentioned when you were uploading this clip?
Yes. Put a shirt on, darling. And here's in his defense, when we were doing interviews in the locker room, God love these young men. They literally had next to no time because this development camp schedule is so packed. So it was literally run in. They are changing their clothes, doing interviews, and running out for the next thing. So this was not at all his fault, but it was just so precious to me.
Yeah, he's still working on that hockey build a little bit too.
Yeah.
Look right now, it looks like the dude from the Little Giants who's like flexing in front of the mirror, and he's just like a string bean.
Yeah. I will tell you, I love this kid. And of course, he's a Penn State boy. So I'm gonna, take an extra special interest in him. But here's what I loved about him at development camp. You come in and you are David Poile's last pick. That's not nothing, my friends. And you are a 7th round pick. And there is almost this, I have to prove that I'm worthy. I have to prove why I'm here. And I think Aiden Fink has come into this camp very comfortable in his game, very confident in what he is good at. And he has not had a development camp where he is trying too hard to show something. And he has really, you've seen glimpses from him of, hey, this is what it is that the Nashville Predators saw in you and why they were interested in you. So I love the way he's embraced this unique position that he has been put in. 7th round pick, David Poile's last pick. But, and he takes that not for granted. I really do think that that's very special to him. But he has come into camp and he is here to show what he can do. And he's not doing too much. He's not trying too hard. And it's been a delight to see this kid.
Yeah, and he's a guy with some tools too. Like he's a smaller kid, that's for sure, but just absolutely lit up the Alberta Junior League last year with 41 goals in 54 games. The people we talked to said, he's like a very kind of aggressive player, likes to go in dirty areas, likes to create space for himself, has a nose for the net, likes to get there. Like the one thing you hear is just if he can improve his skating just a little bit, like if he can boost up his skating from, where it is now to even just like an above average level.
Right.
This is a guy that's going to compete for like a middle 6 NHL spot someday.
Yeah.
They said like that's the one thing that if he can improve on, like he'll be really good. If not, he might have a hard time because of his size, but he's going to Penn State in the Big Ten, which is, arguably one of the two best hockey conferences in the NCAA right now. He's going to get, a chance to go up some good competition. And, Penn State, the results haven't been there the past few years, but it's overall been a pretty good program in their short time. So it is going to be interesting to see if he can improve over the next couple of years. And I know that you will be cheering for him.
Watching, Aiden. I will be watching and cheering for my Penn State boys. You know that.
Yeah. We have more prospects to talk about. Zach LaRue, there's a name that I think a lot of Preds fans are wondering what happens next. Are we going to see him with the Milwaukee Admirals this year? There's some other standouts, guys that we've talked about in past camps who are coming on strong again, and even some wild cards like Svechkov.
Yeah.
We haven't heard a lot from him, since being drafted in the first round. Where's he at? So that is coming up later as we continue our coverage from development camp. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at penaltyboxradio.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan or Threads, also at NS Morgan. Why not? Let's just make that part of the tag as well. Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. Should probably cut before I cough to death. We'll see you tomorrow for another all-new episode.